We have this really intense cultural obsession with grit.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere.
Right. Like from the time we are kids, we are constantly told that endurance is just, the ultimate virtue. You put your head down, you push through the pain, you just grind it out, and eventually, well, the universe rewards you.
That's the promise, yeah.
But what if that exact mindset, the very thing you've been praised for your entire life, is actually becoming a massive physiological hazard?
Yeah, that is the terrifying call-in.
I mean, what if pushing through a toxic job isn't building your character, but is instead like slowly dismantling your biology from the inside out?
It is a deeply uncomfortable paradigm shift for a lot of people to process, honestly. We are so heavily conditioned to view quitting or even just walking away as this massive moral failure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially with our careers.
Exactly. We almost never stop to measure the literal biological cost of that endurance. Because when you are operating in an environment that is, actively hostile to your well-being, endurance stops being a virtue. It transforms into this compounding risk factor.
And exploring that exact risk factor is the whole mission of our deep dive today. We are looking at the hidden biological costs of staying in a toxic work environment, specifically for people who are over the age of 50.
Which is such a crucial demographic to look at.
It really is. And we are pulling from a really compelling source for this. It's a Substack post from June 9, 2026, and it's titled, When Staying is the Health Risk. It was written by John Harris for his publication, which is called Proud Boomer Wellness.
Yeah, and Harris occupies this very specific, much-needed space in the wellness conversation right now. I mean, he isn't writing generic career advice for recent college graduates.
Right, no entry-level tips here.
Exactly. He is writing specifically for adults over 50 who are experiencing tangible, undeniable changes in their bodies. His whole ethos is centered on giving straight answers. There's no hype, there are no miracle supplements to sell, and absolutely no advice that was formulated for, a 30-year-old metabolism.
It was the game changes, right?
It does. It's tailored for a stage of life where the biological stakes of chronic stress are just significantly higher, and that runway to recover from health setbacks is, well, it's a lot shorter.
Okay, let's unpack this, because Harris starts with something incredibly visceral. He dives into that specific tipping point in a bad job where your body starts telling you the truth that your brain completely refuses to admit.
Oh, the denial phase. It's so powerful.
Right. Your conscious mind is still running the standard script, saying, I can handle this, it's fine, it's just a busy quarter, everyone hates their job sometimes. But meanwhile, your physiology is screaming a completely different, desperate story.
Yeah, he lays out these specific physical symptoms that manifest long before we ever consciously acknowledge the workplace toxicity. We are talking about severely disrupted sleep architecture.
Which is awful. And he doesn't just mean tossing and turning, right?
No, he's talking about fundamentally broken sleep cycles. To understand the mechanics of this, you really have to look at what chronic stress does to the brain. When you are under constant professional threat, your nervous system remains in this state of hyperarousal.
Like it can't power down.
Exactly. It prevents your brain from descending into those crucial deep sleep and REM stages where cellular repair actually happens. So you wake up exhausted because your brain spent the whole night, half awake, basically scanning the environment for a predator that happens to look like your inbox.
Wow. And he also points to the gut, which is heavily tied to this.
Well, completely. The gut-brain connection is huge here.
You find yourself either eating terrible, highly processed food just to mine it for a quick dopamine hit, or, on the flip side, your appetite completely vanishes.
Yeah, your digestion just shuts down.
And then there's the exercise piece. You're skipping workouts because you are just utterly depleted at a cellular level. Or, I've done this, you are grinding through these punishing, overly intense workouts just to have a physical outlet for all that suppressed anger you swallowed during the workday.
Yeah, those anger workouts, the physical manifestations are just impossible to ignore once you actually know what to look for.
The detail that really stuck with me, though, the one that made me physically wince, because it is so relatable, is his description of having your shoulders up around your ears by 9 a.m.
Yes. The physical tension is just locked in.
I was thinking about this like a car's dashboard. Imagine you're driving down the highway and your check engine light illuminates. It's glaring red. If you stay in a toxic job and just try to combat it by, meditating more or drinking more green juice.
Oh, the green juice fix.
Right. It's the equivalent of taking a piece of black electrical tape and just sticking it right over the check engine light. You aren't fixing the engine. You're just willfully blinding yourself to the warning system.
What's fascinating here is If we look under the hood of that analogy, the mechanical breakdown happening to your body is actually severe. Harris points out that this isn't everyday garden variety stress.
It's something worse.
Much worse. It is your autonomic nervous system running a distress signal on a continuous loop. When you are exposed to long-term workplace toxicity, you are dealing with chronically elevated cortisol.
Which is bad news.
It's terrible news. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone, and structurally, it is designed for acute, short-term survival. Like, if a lion jumps out of the bushes, cortisol floods your system, pulls blood away from your digestive tract, and pumps glucose into your muscles so you can sprint for your life.
Which is great for emergencies.
Right, it is highly adaptive for about 20 minutes.
But not for 20 months.
Or 20 years. When cortisol is elevated for months because of, say, a micromanaging boss or a fundamentally broken company culture, it becomes deeply destructive. It drives systemic, low-grade inflammation.
Just burning you out from the inside.
Yeah, exactly. It suppresses the immune system because your body thinks fighting off a cold is a luxury when it's supposedly fighting for its life against a predator. Over time, this constant bath of emergency chemicals tears down muscle tissue, it disrupts metabolic function, and it directly contributes to cardiovascular disease.
It is terrifying.
You are essentially tricking your organs into living in a permanent state of emergency.
Well, I want to push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate for the listener who has built their whole life on a different philosophy.
Sure, let's hear it.
Because a lot of people hearing this are inevitably going to think, wait, isn't resilience how you build a successful career? We practically deify people who can weather the storm, who never complain, who just put the team on their back and do the work.
We absolutely do.
It feels almost countercultural to look at a hard situation and say, this is tough, so I am going to leave.
That's a really fair point, and Harris anticipates that exact psychological trap. He actually uses his own background to dismantle it. You see, Harris spent considerable time in the Navy. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, and in the military, you are fundamentally trained to endure. You are conditioned to adapt to miserable, punishing conditions. You learn to subordinate your own comfort to execute the mission.
Which is vital in that context.
Exactly, and he freely acknowledges that this stoic mindset served him incredibly well in certain high-stakes, literal life-or-death situations.
So the mindset works, but the application is flawed.
The application in the civilian world is catastrophically flawed. That military-grade survival mindset does not come pre-installed with an off switch. You take this highly trained, hardened capacity to endure suffering, and you apply it to a toxic corporate workplace.
Which is just a recipe for disaster.
He says he learned this the hard way back when he was 35. He was treating a hostile office environment the exact same way you would treat a difficult military deployment.
Just head down, push through.
Right. But looking back now at 62, he sees the vital difference. A military deployment is a shared sacrifice for a finite period with a higher purpose.
And the corporate job.
The other is a corporate job pushing arbitrary quarterly targets that will replace you a week after you have a heart attack. Applying a survival mindset to a civilian job isn't resilience. It's a fundamental miscalculation of what you are actually fighting for.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because Harris introduces a concept that moves beyond just the physical workload. He calls it the integrity problem.
Yes, this is a crucial pivot.
It pivots the conversation away from just, working too many hours and gets into the psychological damage of the work itself.
The integrity problem is where the stress evolves from being a manageable external pressure into a deeply insidious internal friction.
He argues that when a job starts asking you to compromise who you fundamentally are, like when you are implicitly or explicitly asked to act against your own core values, it creates this psychological dissonance that you just cannot resolve.
It is essentially a form of moral injury.
Exactly. I mean, it's one thing to be tired from building a product you believe in. It is an entirely different biological burden to be tired from enforcing policies you find unethical or covering for leadership that lacks integrity.
Completely different.
And he drops this incredibly memorable quote. He says, "You can't PR your squat and outrun it."
I love that line. It perfectly skewers the modern wellness fallacy. We have this collective delusion that if we just optimize our physical fitness or biohack our morning routine or dial in our macronutrients, we can create this protective shield against the toxicity of our environment.
Like enough kale will save us.
Right, but Harris is pointing out that an integrity conflict is upstream of your biology. The human brain is evolutionarily wired to perceive acting against the tribe's values or its own core values as a threat to social survival.
So the brain actually sees it as a physical danger.
Yes, it triggers the amygdala just like a physical threat would. It doesn't matter how heavy you lift at the gym or how perfectly you calibrate your sleep hygiene. If you spend 8 to 10 hours a day betraying your own conscience, your nervous system will process that as an ongoing trauma.
Wow.
You simply cannot outtrain a compromised conscience.
The physiological toll of lying to yourself every day. I just love that framing. But, we really need to look at the practical, real-world reality for the listener.
Okay, let's get into the weeds.
Because it is one thing to sit here and philosophize like, oh, my job is hurting my integrity and my cellular health. I should just quit tomorrow. But what about the financial realities? Especially for someone in that over 50 demographic Harris is talking to.
The stakes are so high there.
Right. You might have a mortgage, you've got property taxes, maybe you're helping kids with college, and that window for retirement planning is getting narrower by the minute. Expenses do not pause to accommodate a crisis of conscience. For a lot of people, leaving just feels like an impossibly expensive risk to take.
The financial reality is the most common and arguably the most powerful reason people choose to endure toxic environments. The concept of golden handcuffs is very real. But Harris argues that we are doing the math completely wrong.
How so?
He says that the financial justification for staying only works if you count the right things.
Oh, I imagine he's talking about how we're conditioned to only look at the positive inputs on our W-2s while completely ignoring the invisible, devastating costs we're quietly paying in healthcare, therapy, and just lost vitality.
That is the absolute core of his argument. We look at the income side of the ledger, right?
Yeah.
The salary, the health insurance premiums the company covers, the annual bonus, maybe the prestige of a senior title.
The stuff we can easily measure.
Exactly. But we willfully ignore the physical depreciation side of the ledger. Harris states quite definitively that there is no realistic financial compensation that covers the true cost of chronic stress.
None at all.
None. A 5% annual pay raise or a corner office simply does not offset the catastrophic financial and physical cost of having a cardiac event at age 58.
Oh, man. Yeah. When you put it like that.
Right. The corporate bonus doesn't cover the invisible tax of the anxiety medication, the hypertension treatments, and the 2 years of intensive therapy required to untangle the burnout.
You are literally trading your health span for a paycheck. And the exchange rate is just terrible. You're stockpiling money for a retirement you might be too physically broken to actually enjoy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the age factor makes this flawed math much more urgent. Harris does not sugarcoat the reality of the job market. He readily admits that starting over, or pivoting your career when you are 50 plus, is undeniably hard.
Yeah, ageism is a real thing.
The job market is rife with systemic age bias. Hiring algorithms and recruiters often do not treat decades of experience with the respect or compensation it actually warrants. The prospect of re-entering that arena is terrifying. But he makes a crucial distinction that flips the narrative. He says you are not starting from zero.
You're stepping onto a new path, but you're bringing a massive inventory of skills with you.
Exactly. You are bringing decades of applied experience, a deep well of perspective, and crucially, a much more refined sense of your own boundaries.
Which you usually don't have at 25.
Never. You know exactly what you will and will not tolerate now, and that self-knowledge has immense protective value. And from a pure physiological angle, as you age, the bounce-back rate slows down.
Oh, tell me about it.
Sleep disruption and chronic inflammation in your 30s make you tired, right? But the same stressors in your 50s actively accelerate the natural physical decline. Your body loses its margin of error to recover muscle mass, balance hormonal cascades, or maintain sharp cognitive performance if it is expending all its resources fighting a toxic environment.
So the excuses are systematically dismantled. The fake badge of honor that is blind endurance is actually just a lack of an off switch.
Exactly.
The integrity trap is a biological stressor you just can't outlift, and the false math of the golden handcuffs completely ignores the compounding debt of your own health.
It's a lose-lose situation.
But walking away from all of that is daunting, and we want to make sure we're giving the listener a tangible way out. Harris doesn't just diagnose the problem, right? He outlines a psychological and practical approach to escaping it.
He does. He focuses heavily on breaking the paralysis that keeps people stuck. And the very first move he advocates is to start tracking the data.
Because the body is keeping a meticulous score, even when the brain is in total denial.
The human brain is incredibly adept at normalizing trauma. It is a survival mechanism. If you aren't in a bad environment every day, your brain will start telling you, oh, this is just how industries work. It's not that bad. You're overreacting.
We gaslight ourselves.
We do. Tracking your physical data pierces right through that psychological gaslighting. You have to get brutally honest. Track your actual sleep hours on a wearable device. Log the quality of the food you are eating when you're stressed.
Really look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Monitor your resting heart rate or your heart rate variability. The numbers offer an objective, undeniable reality check about the physical toll the job is extracting from you.
And once you have that data staring you in the face, you hit the next realization, which is that the job is not going to fix itself.
That is a very tough pill to swallow.
It really is. But jobs that require you to compromise your values or your health do not self-correct. The manager who is perfectly comfortable asking you to bend your ethics or work 80-hour weeks is not going to suddenly have an epiphany and stop asking.
The dynamic only flows in one direction until you actively disrupt it. And the way you disrupt it without falling into financial ruin is by systematically building a runway.
Getting your ducks in a row.
Right. Before you do something dramatic like quitting in a blaze of glory on a Tuesday morning, you need to change your leverage. Harris notes that accumulating just 6 months of living expenses completely rewires your workplace psychology.
Because it shifts you from operating out of a posture of fear to a posture of power. Trimming your budget to build that cushion isn't a sacrifice. You are literally buying your own autonomy.
Exactly. When you know you can afford to walk away, you negotiate your boundaries with an entirely different energy.
And you can't do any of this in a vacuum, which brings us to his final point, ending the isolation.
This is huge.
When you are deeply embedded in a toxic work culture, the isolation distorts your sense of reality. You start to believe that every workplace operates this way, and that feeling trapped is just a permanent condition.
You lose perspective completely.
You have to talk to someone outside the blast radius of your company. A spouse, a friend in a different industry, a career coach, just someone who can provide external perspective and remind you that the dysfunction you are experiencing is not normal.
So what does this all mean? When we put the biological markers, the moral injury, and the financial reality together, what does making this choice actually look like in the real world?
This raises an important question about how universal and industry agnostic this struggle truly is. We tend to associate toxic workplaces with, like, cutthroat corporate finance or aggressive tech startups.
Sure, the usual suspects.
But in the comment section of Harris's Substack, there was an entry from a user named Joanna Ramirez that perfectly illustrates how this dynamic plays out everywhere.
Oh, wow. What was her situation?
She shared her story about walking away from a career in social work back in 2016. Social work is a field entirely predicated on empathy and helping others. It's like the opposite of corporate greed.
Right, it's mission-driven.
But she described how it was slowly draining her life force. She deeply loved working with the children, but she realized she was entirely sacrificing her own well-being, trying to manage the parents, many of whom actively resisted the help.
Oh, that is heartbreaking.
The internal friction of constantly trying to save people who refuse to participate in their own rescue became biologically unsustainable for her. She had the clarity to walk away, even from a universally recognized noble profession, because she recognized that the physical and emotional cost had bankrupted her capacity to live a healthy life.
That is an incredible reframing. It shows that workplace toxicity isn't just about evil corporate overlords making you work weekends. Sometimes the environment is just fundamentally misaligned with your physiological capacity and your core values, regardless of how noble the mission is.
Exactly. So let's bring this all together for you, the listener. The bottom line of Harris's argument is profound. Staying in a job that costs you your cellular health, that forces you to compromise your integrity just for the perceived safety of a paycheck, that is not loyalty.
No, it's not.
It is not a demonstration of mental toughness or character. It is simply a slow, agonizing drain that benefits everyone in the transaction except you.
And that truth becomes exponential when you cross the 50-year mark. As Harris points out, your time does not become less valuable as you age. It becomes infinitely more valuable.
So true.
The healthy years you have ahead of you are worth protecting at all costs. You cannot build a vibrant, active second half of your life inside a container that is actively dismantling your biology. Sometimes walking away isn't an act of quitting or surrendering. It is the strongest, most fiercely self-respecting action you can take.
I couldn't agree more. For anyone listening who wants to dig deeper into the mechanics of this or who is looking for a roadmap to rebuild, I highly recommend checking out John Harris's work. His Substack is called Proud Boomer Wellness, It runs about $20 a month or $80 a year, and it is packed with this exact kind of no-nonsense, biologically grounded, straight talk.
Highly recommend it.
Additionally, if you are looking to actively rebuild the physical resilience we've been talking about, he has a book on Amazon called Not Done Yet. It's a fantastic call to action focused entirely on strength and fitness, specifically for those over 50 who refuse to quietly fade into the background.
It's an excellent resource for shifting your focus away from enduring a bad environment and back toward rebuilding your own physical and mental autonomy.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, exploring the deep connections between our values, our workplaces, and our biology. But we want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
We talked at the very beginning about how your body is essentially keeping a meticulous, uncompromising ledger of every environment you place it in. Every unaligned stressor, every ethical compromise, every night of cortisol-soaked broken sleep is permanently recorded in your cells.
The body keeps a score.
Always. So look at your own dashboard right now. What exactly is your current workplace depositing into that account? Are you accumulating genuine resilience and wisdom that will serve you down the road? Or are you quietly, daily, stockpiling a massive physiological debt that will eventually bankrupt the very retirement you're working so desperately hard to reach?